Hello and welcome to Chapter 5, Loops and Iteration. Now we're going to work on our fourth basic pattern of sequential, conditional, store and reuse, and loops and iteration. And this is the one where we teach the computer how to do things a lot. We can tell it to do something a million times. And so that's where we get the doggedness of computers, or the fact that they're so good at doing work for us because we can set them off to a task and they'll do it until it's done. So here's a very simple loop. Let's put the coffee over here. The keyword that we're going to start using is the while loop. We're also going to use the for later on. And the while loop functions very much like an if statement. The while starts it, and then this is just like an if statement. It's a question that leads to a true or a false answer. And then there's a colon, and then there's an indented block, and then we use the de-indent to determine how long the loop is, and so this print is de-indented, so that indicates the end of the loop. And so at some level, what's going to happen here is it's just going to run, and if this is true, it's going to run this code, and if it's false, it's going to skip the code. In that way, it functions like an if. The place that it doesn't function like an if is after it's run the code once, it goes up and then asks the question again. And so you can think of it going back up kind of to the top of the while loop and then re-asking the question, like, okay, is this going to run again? And then it's going to do that some number of times, and then it's going to finish. And so that's the loop, that's the iteration. And we're going to make a variable. We're going to construct very carefully a variable that we call the iteration variable, and that's n. And it's a variable that's going to change, and it's our way of running the loop, but not running the loop forever. So let's just run this. We come in, n is 5. Is n greater than 0? Yes, it is. So we're going to run this code. We're going to print out 5, then we're going to subtract 1, and then we're going to go back up and ask the question, is n greater than 0? And the answer is, since it's 4, the answer is yes. So then it runs again. Then it prints out 4, subtracts it again, checks, prints 3, subtracts it again, prints 2, subtracts it again, prints 1, subtracts it again. Now n is 0, and so it comes back up, is this question has now become false. So it's going to take the exit. So it's going to come down and run this line right here. Then it prints blast off, and we can kind of print out the residual value of n just to sort of prove to ourselves that it ran until n was no longer greater than 0, and then 0 was the final value for n. And we carefully constructed this n equals, oops, go back. We carefully constructed n. We set it to 5, then we carefully subtracted 1 each time through the loop, and then we're using that to control when to exit the loop. And so you could think of this loop as, for now, running 5 times, true, 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 and then false finally. So this question was true for a while, and as long as it was true, the loop ran, and then when it turned false, the loop stopped. And so this variable that we construct to control the loop was called the iteration variable, because it tells how many times this loop is going to run over and over, or otherwise known as iterate. So this is a badly constructed loop with an iteration variable that we didn't do very well. And so if we take a look at this, we start it with n5, and then this is greater than 0, so it's true, so it runs it, and then it runs it again, and n is still greater than 0. So you can pretty much see, because we're not changing n, this is going to be true, 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 dot, 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 forever, true forever. And so this is an infinite loop. And it's just going to run until your computer runs out of battery, or you hit the button. This is the kind of thing where you often see your computer spinning like a spinning beach ball, or some other indication that your computer's super busy. It's in some kind of a loop, really tight, and it's running something, and it's using up all of the processing resources of your computer. That's an infinite loop. And so the problem is we did nothing with the iteration variable. Now here's a different loop. And so this one demonstrates a different idea. So in this case, we start out with n is 0, and it comes in here, and is n greater than 0? Question mark, and the answer is false. So it skips it. It doesn't run these lines of code at all. And so this loop doesn't run at all, because it comes in, asks the question, it says no, and then it skips right around it. So never run, never run. And so this actually is, sometimes you write a while loop on purpose like this, not quite as simple as this one, but the idea is this emphasizes that these loops are what we call zero trip. They are not even guaranteed to run once. They're going to run maybe 0 times. And in this respect, it functions exactly like an if statement, right? Meaning the first time through the loop, if it's not true, it's just going to skip right by it. So there's a couple of ways of getting out of loops. In this case, I'm constructing an infinite loop because remember the kind of definition of an infinite loop is if this is going to stay true. Well, true is the constant true. So this is going to run forever. And what it's going to do is it's going to prompt with a little arrow and then let us type and read whatever we type into the variable line. And then if the line is done, we're going to break. Now break is an executable statement. And if you hit the break, it exits the innermost loop out to the place beyond the end of the loop. So when this runs the first time, and we say hello there, line is not done, so it prints it. So it prints out hello there and then goes up. And then we type in again, we type finished, and so it's not done, so it prints it. So now comes that print statement. And then we type in done, and now this becomes true. And it comes out and runs the code beyond the end of the loop. The key is it doesn't go back. It's like once you've done a break, that loop is done. And so you look at basically, the block that is the loop. So here's kind of the loop block. And then the break goes to the line after the end of the loop block. And you can think of this as sort of like just a hyperspace jump. There is nothing really, this could be literally hundreds of lines with if statements, and you could be running and doing all kinds of stuff and running and doing all these things, and these things could run all kinds of ways, right? The point is as soon as you hit a break statement, however much stuff is down here, however much stuff is up here, it exits to whatever the next line is beyond the end of the loop. Continue is another loop control statement, but it works differently than break. So break says get out of this loop. Continue effectively says stop this iteration. We're done with this iteration. And so continue says go up back to the top of the loop. Oops. Yeah. Go up back to the top of the loop. And so here we read a line. If the first character is a pound sign, line sub 0, if that first character is pound sign, we're going to skip it. And this is a way for us to make like little comments in our typing. And then we print, if the line is done, we get out, and otherwise we print it. And so that's why there is no printout here, because it comes in, runs, oops. It comes in, this is true, and that goes back up. But it comes back and prints out the next one and does another thing. And so the loop continues, whereas the break ends the loop. And so again, the same kind of notion that you're sort of doing all kinds of complexity. Wherever you're at in this loop, you hit continue, and it doesn't go any further. It goes back up and runs the question mark. It asks the question mark. And so, asks the question, and it might exit the loop in that particular case. But this one here is this is an infinite loop that I've constructed. This is not an infinite loop because at some point the break gets us out of the loop. And so it's an infinite loop with break to escape it. And that's another common way to construct a loop. So these loops that we've been drawing so far, the ones that use while as their keyword, are what are called indefinite loops. And that's because they kind of go for a while, till a break hits or until some value becomes true. As long as that value remains true. So all the ones we've done so far are easy to look at and know that they look pretty good and they're probably going to finish. But there are sometimes, if they're long and complex and their exit or termination conditions are a little more complex, it's not clear that they're really going to terminate. And so we can use while loops for a lot of things, but for most of our looping, we're going to use what are called definite loops, and that's what we're going to talk about next.